A majority will always, override that of the minority. So I want to put it right that it was the entire leadership that took that. Then what did they say? Look, we do not in any way, we are not comfortable with the process leading to the suspension of the CJN. We're asking the president to reverse that decision and do the appropriate thing. And they will not recognize the current acting CJN as the CJN of the Federation. They would rather want Onnoghen to continue until the proper thing is done through the constitutional means in his removal process or suspension.
What's the proper thing?
Very correct. The matter is sub judice. But I want to, let's broach it a bit. The issue of discipline of judicial officers had been settled by plethora of authorities. My learned colleague here knows it. It's been settled. It's a constitutional issue. If a judicial officer is accused of any misconduct, his matter must first and foremost be referred to NJC. And that is what they have done now. 2 days ago, or is it yesterday, I read in the papers now that there is now a proper petition against Justice Onnoghen in NJC. And NJC has even abridged the time within which he has to respond, giving him 7 days because of the gravity of the allegation to respond. That is what we have been saying all along.
Is this misconduct? Is this misconduct?
Yes.
This misconduct?
Yes.
Is it just misconduct,
yes,
as you have said?
Yes.
Or is it misconduct that has got an element of corruption in it?
Beautiful. I like that question. You ask yourself, what is the objective that the federal government has set out with Justice Onnoghen? Are they investigating him for omission to state certain amount of money he allegedly opened in a bank? Or are they investigating him for corruption?
No, because what it has graduated to is that he was initially being questioned on those assets that he did not declare,
he didn't declare
owing to banks.
Beautiful.
Now it's been discovered that there is even much more than what was even discovered that ought to have been in the CCT form CCB.
Yes, yes. Very good, very good. They have discovered more things that the man has hidden that now has translated into corruption, element of corruption and all that. They have to, the security agencies would have gathered their facts and all the information at their disposal and still send it to NJC. That is the proper thing. Now, when you finish with that, it's even other issue of omission. Send it to NJC. NJC will look at this, give him time to respond.
Will it amount
because
to
he's
him
a judicial officer?
No,
yes.
will it amount then to him being a judge in his own case?
No, not him. In this case, now this is what happened. You guys were also making this argument that virtually every member of the NJC is appointed by the CJN, and so they will not be disposed towards doing justice. What happened yesterday? Is it yesterday or 2 days ago? He wasn't the one that sat. People that sat now gave him query within 7 days to answer, mind you. So the issue of accusing the leadership or they will not do the right thing and all that. I want the right thing. What does the Constitution say? What has been the case with judges who are accused of misconduct and all that, or even stealing and all that, corruption? What has happened previously? The matter goes to NJC and they look at it. Now the man cannot preside over the issue. It's after they finish and give him opportunity to respond. They can send it back to the president. There are two things you can do. It's either you suspend him, which is disciplinary measure because they will recommend it. You now suspend him, pending the time you now either go to what is it? This place you go. I mean, CCT. Beautiful, or you take him to the Senate for removal. And when Senate will look at all the evidence that is available, the two-thirds majority for the CJN I'm talking about. Other judicial officer, you don't go towards the Senate at all. The president can take that decision of either dismissal if they have recommended dismissal. So these are issues when it concerns CJN because of the importance of that office, because of the legal safeguards provided to a head of arm of government. The judiciary, the legislative assembly must be involved.
Hold on, did Tanko commit an infraction?
Yes.
To be allowed himself, when he allowed himself to be sworn in as acting CGM?
Because of precedents. Precedents have already been established.
That's part of what they've said now. But let's quickly get a response to this.
I think we have to agree that this is a very peculiar situation.
Good.
Mr. Ubani had talked about precedents that we have had in the past. But we have never had a precedent which involved the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who happened to be the chairman of the National Judicial Council. Mr. Ubani has also referred to what happened the day before yesterday, the NJC proceedings. The question is, will it have happened that way if what happened last week did not happen,
which is the suspension.
Which is the suspension of Mr. Onnoghen. If Justice Onnoghen was just sitting as the Chief Justice of Nigeria and as the chairman of the National Judicial Council, we are not too sure that the proceedings of the NJC of the day before yesterday will have been the
Okay,
same.
but are you then saying that the suspension of the CJN by the president relying on an ex parte motion or ex parte order was in order?
I think it is the court that will eventually determine.
By reason of what
you've
said
already. It's an ex parte, meaning the other party doesn't have to be served. So was that a step that was correctly done?
Well,
did the president act well using that ex parte order?
The president had an order. It is not for him to question the validity or otherwise, or the propriety of the making of that order.
But he had the option to say he wouldn't obey.
No, he does not have an option.
But there are also allegations.
There is no such option
there are allegations.
Anyone.
There are some court orders that the government had refused to obey. So why this one?
Well, those are entirely different matters. But legally
they are court orders all the same.
Yeah, legally speaking, no one has a right or the power authority to say I will not obey.
Okay, let me rephrase this. Is the CCB in order, CCT in order to have issued that ex parte on the suspension of the CJN?
I wouldn't. It is not what I would expect the CCT to do.
Why not?
Because, okay, yeah.
Ex parte.
But you see, in your build-up, you said that if what happened didn't happen, would that what is going on with the NJC have happened? When I suggest as though what happened to the CCT was right.
No, not in the CCT, the suspension of the CJN.
Leveraging on the ex parte
If the CJN was just sitting and he hadn't been suspended, he would be the chairman of the
Yeah, but what I'm asking is, can you bring that up without relying on the order that preceded his suspension?
It was suspended.
Rightly or wrongly?
Rightly or wrongly.
Was it right that it was suspended?
That is the reality on ground.
Was it right?
Based on the CCT order, I will not do that. I will probably have relied on an order made upon argument by both sides.
Okay, so can we then say that, well, what you said concerning the CJN presiding or not presiding wouldn't arise? Because since you say that, well, you wouldn't have gone with the CCT's ex parte.
No, it will arise. It will arise because if the president took a step, even if there was no CCT order, and that is why I disagree with those who say that the Constitution is clear on the issue of the procedure for suspending.
You think it's not?
It is not.
How?
Definitely not. Section 292.
229?
No, 292 of the Constitution is basically on removal. There is no clear provision on suspension. Now, the Constitution, Section 318, says that if the Interpretation Act shall be applicable in interpreting any provision of the Constitution. Now you go to the Interpretation Act. The Interpretation Act says that whoever has the power to appoint has the power to suspend or remove.
Okay, Section 11.
Yes. So the president actually has the power to suspend if we stretch it from the Constitution to the Interpretation Act.
Demo, let's understand that this particular section you quoted was used in Sanusi's matter, that whosoever has the right to appoint has the right to suspend. And the court held that the suspension of Sanusi was wrong. It's a judicial decision still in existence. Does the president alone appoint a CJN? He is not even the one. What his job is just as a clearance house.
That's not what the Constitution says.
Look at what the Constitution says, the process of appointing a CJN. Shortlisting is done by Federal Judicial Service Commission. They send it to NJC. NJC recommends to the president. The president now sends his name to the Senate for clearance. he comes back, he swears in me.
Couldn't the president have refused
Yes.
that particular name recommended by
If
the
the
NJC?
NJC has recommended, you know, the president of this country delayed submitting the name of Onnoghen. Now remember what happened. People say you can have no right, the discretion, because the NJC has recommended it. So it's a process. So when the president alone is not the one that actually appoints the CJN, then you cannot in any way be the one to suspend it. Let me say this. Disciplinary measures are given to NJC in the schedule of the Constitution. Okay. And this issue of suspension is only the NJC that can recommend suspension of a judicial officer. He knows it. Plethora of authorities have shown it. Okay. Because of a CJN now being involved does not mean that he's no longer a judicial officer.
Is that right or wrong?
It is wrong.
How?
Because as a matter of fact, Section 292 didn't even talk about the NJC recommending to the president. It talked about the Senate on an address to the president. If the Constitution, if the Constitution had intended for the removal, for the suspension of the CJN to come through the NJC, it will have been clearly stated.
Okay, so tell us, from your perspective, we need to go to break soon, but in the removal of the CJN, what is the procedure? Where is the first protocol?
Well, what the Constitution says in Section 292 is that the Senate shall, upon an address by the Senate, 2/3 vote of the Senate to the President. That is the starting point.
The Senate is the starting point?
Yes.
Who initiates this issue of going to the Senate? There must be a process. For the fact that the Constitution does not put into details, you also must, there must be a process. There must have been something that has happened before you now take it to the Senate upon address of 2/3. So the Senate cannot single-handedly just initiate the 2/3 and remove a CJN. He knows it.
We have
that's how far we can go at this point. Of course, he will go on and on. Mr. Gbenga Ojo is a legal practitioner. Mondo Ubani, equally a legal practitioner, but former NBA chair Lagos and former second vice president of the NBA. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's the show today. We'll get the other party and we'll toss them up. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.